In the picturesque Tudor village of Lower Quinton, its thatched roofs golden among the Cotswold hills, they speak of witches with a wry grin, and some people will not pass down Hillborough Lane for fear of a headless, ghostly woman in white. On the hilltops around Quinton are circles of stone, and it was under the shadow of Meon Hill that on Valentine's Day of 1945, a sickly, gnarled old man was found murdered 8 miles from Stratford upon Avon, Warwickshire. His injuries were hideous. The sickle blade of a trouncing hook had ripped his throat away and was stuck, still gleaming in the wounds. His thin old arms were cut where he tried to defend himself. His face was twisted wildly with fright, and his body was pinned deliberately to earth by the prongs of a pitchfork. A young woman found the body at early dusk, and before darkness, officers of Warwickshire Constabulary were already on the scene. At 1 o'clock, Chief Constable Alex Spooner rang up London for help. He reached the Criminal Investigation Division of Scotland Yard, where Detective Inspector Robert Fabian and his assistant, Sergeant, later Inspector, Albert Webb, were assigned the case. The rest of this story is taken from Fabian's autobiography, Fabian of the Yard.
In the field under Meon Hill, a young constable stood guard over thick, clogged bloodstains upon the grass, matted with hawthorn twigs. The dead man was Charles Walton, aged 74. A recluse, his little cottage stood a couple of fields away from where he was found. He lived frugally, worked as a hedger, and was gnarled and faltering with rheumatism. "What motive?" I inquired briskly. "Robbery, revenge, a quarrel?" Superintendent Spooner gave an odd smile and handed me a book, Folklore, Old Customs and Superstitions in Shakespeare's Land, by Harvey Bloom, and I read. In 1875, a young man killed an old woman named Anne Turner with a hayfork because he believed she had bewitched him. Spooner handed me another book. It was Warwickshire by Clive Holland. A man named John Haywood, who stabbed to death with a pitchfork an old woman, exclaiming that he would kill all the 16 witches in Long Compton. His mode of killing was evidently a survival of the ancient Anglo-Saxon custom of dealing with witches by means of storsing or sticking spikes into them. Sergeant Webb laid a mock-sympathetic hand upon Spooner's shoulder. "The mad, hectic life of the country is proving too much for you, sir," he said. Alex Spooner, a highly scientific policeman, smiled patiently. "You wait and see, my lad." By the afternoon, we had brought the 20th century to Lower Quinton like a cold bath. An Avro plane from the nearby airbase buzzed low over Meon Hill, taking photographs, while a division of khaki-clad men of the Royal Engineers walked slowly with mine detectors that sang shrilly in their earphones. Only 2 miles distant, there were 1,043 prisoners of war. Inspectors from Scotland Yard were sent to check on them. The 493 villagers of Lower Quinton, Upper Quinton and Admington Webb and I decided we would tackle personally. There were boot marks in the field, peculiarly studded. We took plaster casts, traced each to its owner, but all these people proved innocent. We made our investigations in the village from door to door. There were lowered eyes, reluctance to speak, except for talk of bad crops, a heifer that died in the ditch and the poor quality of their year's ale. What did that have to do with Charles Walton? No one would say. Once while I was out, a black dog ran down Meon Hill, and a moment later a farm lad followed. "Looking for that dog, son?" I asked. He went pale. "Dog, mister?" "A black dog." But without further word, he stumbled off in his heavy farm boots. While I stared after him, Superintendent Spooner said quietly, "There is a local legend of a man who saw a black dog on this hill. It turned into a headless woman who rustled past him in a black silk dress. The next day, his sister died. That afternoon, a police car ran over a dog. Next day, another heifer died in a ditch. And when Albert Webb and I walked into the village pub that evening, silence fell like a physical blow. Cottage doors were shut in our faces, and even the most innocent witness seemed unable to meet our eyes. Some became ill after they spoke to us. We persevered, took 4,000 statements, traced tinkers and tramps, but the murder remained unsolved. One night, when we had waited all day to question one man who might have aided us, I said, "I'm inquiring about the late Charles Walton." He interrupted me gruffly. "He's been dead and buried a month now. What are you worrying about?" Then he shut the door. So we had to leave it. Maybe somebody in that tranquil village off the main road knows who killed Charles Walton, who lies buried among the neat grey tombstones of Lower Quinton churchyard. Maybe one day somebody will talk. Not to me, a stranger from London perhaps. But I happen to know that in the offices of the Warwickshire Constabulary the case is not yet closed.